when you don't have a strong brand or name, even with the family helping, there's times where it can get low, So I just knew that, luckily, that I had to have another balance of income, because until I could fully market, I was going to run dry on that aspect. The friends, family, and the subcontracting kind of dwelled down a little bit. So then I kind of got, and this is kind of crazy, I'm going to be honest with you, but I started doing a little bit of door knocking, and we were successful at it.
Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim Aline, and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business.
Zachiary Kuper, how are you today, man?
Good. How are you today, Jim? It's been an honor to be on your show today.
Yeah, awesome, man. So S&K Construction and Remodeling in the great state of Ohio. Good Midwestern boy.
Yeah,
how'd you get into roofing, man?
When I was younger, I started working for a guy, I was like 18, actually right out of high school, kind of liked it, liked being in the sun, and the physicality of, it kept you in good shape, and it was always kind of rewarding. I felt like after you finish the project, and obviously you're pulling up to a roof that's in poor condition, and when you leave them, it's just kind of rewarding seeing how much of a curb appeal difference a roof really makes, So I really just got nice into the trade, It was nice. You're up high in the air. No one's really bothering you,
Yeah, definitely. And then, so, from there, what's the journey been?
We kind of got the journey from there. I worked there for a while, and it was great. And then he kind of got older, retired off, and I kind of didn't want to get out of it. So we came from a smaller town, so I had all the guys that were, willing to come on with me. And then I started branching off on my own. And that was 14 years ago, so been doing it ever since,
Yeah, and 14 years with your own business, and you're still here.
Yeah.
You're still making it.
Yeah, right?
It's an accomplishment, man, really, to to be able to do it. What were the early days like?
A lot of learning, a lot of trial and error, unfortunately, your best lessons unfortunately come from mistakes, what to do, what not to do. I would always learn, like, unfortunately, you always, only God's perfect, right? So when you'd come back and forth, you'd learn, and you'd learn how to make a system and process as you went. And that really helped fulfill all my obligations as far as being a better person, a better contractor, and a better owner, right? So
Yeah.
as you learn good to bad, and that's how you become great, really, I mean, everything's always evolving too. I've always realized your mind's always got to be open to learn, right? Because just when you think you got the market figured out, it switches on you,
Yeah. It'll change quick, that's for sure. What do you think the first aha moment you had was in those early days? Like, was it, around, man, I can't, I need to find someone to help me with this? Was it around, like, what were some of those first aha moments? Like, oh, this is actually becoming a business. This isn't just, me making a living anymore.
Well, that's a great question. For me, well, I actually I worked at a chemical plant. Okay. So I had a full-time gig on top of this, but I was blessed in that regard because we worked like 12 rotating swings, so I'd get 3 days on, 4 days off. Right. So I had a lot of time in between the full-time gig to fulfill the roofing obligation. Right. And the moment was when I'm sleeping in between my truck at a Subway parking lot in between jobs, because I have estimates when I get off work, and the phone's ringing while I'm at work. And I said, oh man, this is getting overwhelming, and
Yeah.
sometimes you wouldn't be coming home to your own house for a couple days because you'd leave that work. You'd have to go get estimates for your business. Right. So that was the moment I was like, it's really evolving, so I had to that was the moment, because it was getting overwhelming, but, that's what it takes to get to the level of security, right? I had to, at least in my
Yeah.
position,
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, and that's what I think there's like an old kind of adage around that, or don't quit one job until you have another kind of thing, right? Like
Right.
you want to, so take me back to those days. So, okay, so you were working with the roofing company kind of like on your days off, or how, and the chemical plant, like what was it looking, what did your week look like back then? Like, how did how'd you manage that, or how, you said you were working for a roofing company before. Did you get the job at the chemical plant, like in while you were like, how did that come about? What were those days like?
Okay, well, I was younger, right? So at the time I was in my mid 20s, so
Uh-huh.
I had to, scrounge around to be able to get the capital to be able to fulfill, and run a full-time job or as a business owner, right? So I knew when I was younger that obviously I had to have something as well to be able to pay and survive, right? So I would work at the chemical plant 12 hours, usually, and it was swing shift. So that's what made it a little tough, midnights,
Yeah.
days, it just depended how they needed you. And so on my days off, I kind of started off subbing for a couple guys. This was before I learned how to market, right? But the thing that drove me to become on my own, like really, instead of like subbing, was eventually I'd work for guys and we'd only have, a couple roofs here and there. And then I was basically selling my crew to contractors, right? Like, hey, man, do you got jobs? Do you got jobs? And then I was like, the effort and energy I'm putting in to try to find jobs, I might as well just go sell them to the homeowners and do it all,
Mm.
So that was kind of what I was
Yep.
getting. Hey, we got 30 jobs, you do 5 or 6 and then it kind of dried up, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that is what it pushed me to that. And then, you start giving a good job. I feel like there's like phases and levels to this, especially when you first start out. Friends and family are more able to push for your name. So I feel like in the beginning, especially, every friend and family tried everything they could to help you, which was fantastic,
Mm.
but and then
I
so
want to
that kinda
stop
kept
there.
me busy.
I want to stop there for a sec because I that's there's like that's like the first thing that people overlook, I think, when they're starting a business. I actually just saw a video this morning from Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, the, marketing, I don't know if you wanna call him guru, big social media influencer, and he was doing a video, and he was talking about starting a landscape company, and he took out his phone and he goes, "You know what I would do if I started a landscape company? Is I would make a video like this. Hey, I'm Jim Aline, I'm starting a landscape company. You know, I'm going through everyone in my phone and just letting you know, I don't want anything from you, but if you know anyone that needs landscaping services, please reach out. Hey, if this is, I may have known you for a long time, I may have met you only one time, but your number is in my phone. I'm going from A to Z, and I'm sending this to everyone. Like, I'm starting a new business. I would appreciate someone to to get the word out for me, to help me get the word out." And I was like, "We don't do that." Right?
No.
There's no like, and even on a small scale, like just being at family dinner on Sunday or on Thanksgiving or something and making sure that all your cousins know. You know what I mean? Hey, I got a roofing company now. You know anyone? Like, it's there's these things that I think we skip over that and go to try to, maybe we go and try and buy leads, or we try and do more marketing or something like that. It's like, no, no, we're missing these people that we already have relationships with. Did you do anything special, or was it just like, hey, I told my friends and family? What
Yeah,
were some of those things?
yeah, kinda, and I'm great we're touching on this 'cause that's what, really helped drive me to that level, is yeah, so I would tell them about it, give them my business card. Obviously, my family was real big on, like, Sunday dinners, so I'd see everybody a lot. So
Yeah.
that helped a lot too, but and then your friends and family, and this was even before just, like, advertising, they see it. I would always post my jobs on my personal business page, right? So and then, your friends and family are really helping you out. So that helped
Yep.
me just even on my personal page was a huge jump to success, and
Yeah.
when you first start out, obviously a couple benefits, you're kind of just starting, so your overhead's low, so it's easier to win. And, for me personally, I personally put the jobs on when I started. So that was also nice too, because I made sure that my name stayed clean on that regard, um,
Yeah.
because I was actually overseeing it, installing it. And yeah, I would agree. And it's like you don't realize, especially in the beginning, right? I mean, in roofing, and eventually every river kind of goes dry on that. But for the first few years, it was great because everybody was receptive. They always want to help the new guy, they want to see him succeed,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's how I felt, but
Yep. And that's true, they do. You always and then it's weird when it gets to a point where like, "Oh, no, he's doing good enough." Right?
and that's how it goes, right? And it's funny you say that, Jim, because it's like after a year or two, the river goes dry.
Yeah.
The friends are,
Yep.
they're not helping anymore. And then that's kind of where you got to turn to the marketing aspect,
You
right?
gotta turn to the marketing, yep. What was, as you were, kinda in your truck, sleeping in between, your shift at the plant and going out and doing estimates and overseeing jobs that were being built or actually doing the work also at that time, right? Um, what was you know, was it a level of, "Hey, I've replaced that salary now? Now I'm able to go this way," or what was the trigger in your mind that was like, "Okay, this thing is working and I gotta go all in on this now."
Yeah, that's a fair comment. Well, one, Jim, to be honest, I was starting to get burned out, so that also played its part. Even at the time I was in my 20s, but I was getting worked really hard. So that kind of pushed me to go to, I got to make a decision here. And then at the time when I was making my roofing money, I basically didn't spend it, right? Like I just saved it, and I knew that I was gonna need it for capital, right? So, eventually when I got to a comfortable position where I was like, "Hey, I think I got enough capital that I can withstand, a little bit of up and downs because as they come, And then I just finally was like, "Okay, I think it's time, man." Like, I saved up my money. I'm burnt out, you know? I gotta do it. And that's kind of what drove me to it. As I saved up all my money, I was very smart about it. I mean, once in a while, I'd reward myself, maybe go to a sporting event or something to kind of keep
Yeah.
me from going insane, But
Yep.
that's what kind of drove me, man, because I was able to have the additional cash, and I was kind of scared at first. I mean, everybody does it differently, right? But me personally, I was like, I don't want to go in debt and get a, $50,000, $100,000 loan. And then if something doesn't work, be to the point where I can't get out of debt. So I was like, I'll save my own earnings and take the risk that way. That's how I felt.
Where did that come from in your life? Were you listening to, like or did you read some books? Was it a family kind of family advice that you followed? Like, this is what where did that a lot of people don't do that. They just get out there and go, and then that first check hits the bank, and it's like, "All right, we got money." You know?
Yeah. Well, hard lessons, like the first few times I did a couple jobs. And then when you first start, it's like, it's hard, but like I've always been on your books, the omnipresence.
Yeah.
So when you don't have a strong brand or name, even with the family helping, there's times where it can get low, So I just knew that luckily that I had to have another balance of income because
Yep.
until I could fully market, I was going to run dry on that aspect. And at the time, I built my own house at 21, right? So I had my house well before my business. So I knew that I couldn't lose my home, So I had to have a stable financial income, to be able to
Yep.
jump boats.
Yeah. Did you have a specific amount in mind when you started, or did you just get to the point where you went,
Yeah, it was
"Okay,
like
I'm there now."
50,000. I was like, because at the time I was like, but
Mhm.
this was almost 14 years ago, right? So as I was saying, so 50 grand then meant a lot more than it does now. Probably now
Yeah,
it's,
adjusted for inflation, I think that was about 1 million, 1.2 million.
yeah, pretty much, right? But back then 50 grand was kind of enough for me because again, I was
Yeah,
doing the roofs, I was installing them. So I didn't have much overhead. I just had 3, 4 guys. I mean, Jim, I was answering my own phones, selling the jobs. So I kind of at the time was very small, right? Like a crew of 5 or
yeah,
6 guys, not,
yep,
but so I was able to do that, you know,
yeah,
and
yep. And then, as you said, when that friends and family kinda you started hitting that, "Okay, well, this is about as far as I'm going with this." What was the next thing that you did to start to attract customers to your business?
right. So like you said, there's always a level of a pushback at this business, right? You always get to the next level and there's something that you got to figure out, a hoop to jump through. So, on that regard, like you said, the friends, family, and the subcontracting kind of dwelled, dwelled down a little bit. So, then
Mhm.
I kind of got, and this is kind of crazy, I'm going to be honest with you, but I started doing a little bit of door knocking and we were successful at it. But the problem was, I didn't have a large team of door knockers to be super successful, right? So it was like a guy and me, and we would like, obtain some work. But so we did a little bit of knocking, and then also, which is really wild to say, but we were buying shared leads, from like Home Advisor, stuff like
Yeah.
that, you know, and there for a while it
What
was
year what
okay.
what year wa what year was that
That was probably
about?
like probably like in between year 2 and 3, like two and a half
So
ish.
maybe 15, 16, 2015, 2016. Or
Yeah,
wait, am I
about that.
doing the math right?
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm doing the math right. 16 minus 13. When'd you start? About 13?
yeah,
Tw
13.
12, 13?
Yeah,
So, yeah, about 15, 16, maybe 2015,
yeah,
2016.
yep,
Yep.
that's correct. And yeah, so I started buying the shared leads, and I'll admit at first it was kind of working, right? And, mainly because I feel like with them, it's a race to the bottom, it's the cheapest guy. But at the time, I was able to be cheap because I only had a small crew, right?
Yeah.
And then, as things got going, I will say, referrals, yard signs, as we say, the omnipresence starts really achieving at its
Mhm.
greatness level, So then the phone's ringing. Now I'm getting stressed out, Jim. I'm on the roof and the phone's ringing and I'm supposed to be nailing it on, And in my mind, I'm getting stressed out because I know speed to lead matters. So,
Yeah.
and, I'll be honest. So you got to stop and answer the phone. What happens when you stop? Now your whole crew stops.
Uh-huh.
So they're like, well, the boss is relaxing. Let's relax. So it got to the point where I was like, hey, I need a secretary, you know, get a secretary. Overhead comes, hey, we're getting multiple jobs. We need another truck so the guys can veer off. So it worked for a while. Then Angie's had bought it out, right? And then it just kind of it got a little more challenging. Like there was more
Yeah.
contractors coming to the table. They claimed they sent 3, but I feel like there was more, you know? Um, so it was like either the homeowner would love you and price shop you and, play everyone against everyone. Oh, well, they can do it for this. They can do it for that. Or they just wouldn't plain answer your phone because they were so irritated. They're like, you're the 7th person that's called me, and it wouldn't go to your hand, right? So, or they
Yeah.
just flat out were, I don't know, fictitious or didn't answer. They just wouldn't answer you. I got done, and she was a
Yep.
sweetheart, and she really took care of me. And I was a little adamant, still a little nervous, and then I finally committed to you guys, and it was like a life changing experience, man. It was like
That's awesome.
the Google ads were like, I want to be honest, coming from Home Advisor to you, it was like it was so easy compared to that kind of mentality. Like, what? This guy wants to talk to me? Like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
excited to have me out here, you know? Wow. And you actually go there, they answer their phone. I don't got to chase them down like they're calling me. It was like I was so used to outbound, not inbound, you know?
Mm. Yeah, it's a big difference when you switch to when you're attracting those customers and they're choosing to call you versus they're getting called by multiple companies and being annoyed. So that was the next phase, right? So you had your lead, we'll call it the lead aggregator phase. You bought leads, and that got you, I mean, that got you from somewhere to somewhere, right? Like
It,
that got,
it,
how was it in that time? Like, where were you at about when you, like, when that's kind of at the peak in that era? We'll call it the leads era for you.
yeah, it definitely enhanced and made my business at a better scale, you know? Um,
Yep.
and at first it was working tremendous. And I mean, this is crazy, Jim, to be honest with you, but I got so heavy lead relying on that service and referrals that, and then when you get bigger, you're almost like, you're kind of realizing, okay, we're cycling money here. We got to
Yeah.
do something. And then when you don't have any branding, which I made that mistake, just lead, 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 you're kind of playing Russian roulette, right? You're living and dying
Mm.
by the lead. So if once you stop giving them money, the phone dries up, you
Yeah.
know? So that
I think there's lessons though, and we talked about this before, but like there's lessons in all of the things that you do. And one of the things that you learned there was the speed to lead. I would assume, I'm just making assumptions here. You could tell me if I'm on track or off track, but I bet you got better at selling.
oh,
Like,
definite.
right? Like, because you're competing hard, right? Like, I bet you learned some lessons in sales during that period. I bet you know what I mean? Like, what are some of those things that stick out to you that you're like, yeah, the because they still, man, I'll say it's not the first thing I would do in 2026, right? Is go buy Angie and Home Advisor leads, but it might be a thing that, if a company gets big enough, now all of a sudden, they need to add more channels. I wouldn't, there's a lot of other, not just Angie and Home Advisor, but there's lead aggregator options out there, right? There you can go and buy leads, and it works. Um, but what were some of those lessons that you learned that you, looking back now during that time of business, what were some of the lessons you learned during that time frame?
Before we carry on with the episode, let's give a shout out to one of our sponsors. Well, first, let's get real. You're great at building roofs, but are you great at building a steady stream of leads? That's where Job Nimbus Marketing comes in. They know the roofing industry inside and out, and they'll help you dominate Google, Facebook, reputation management, and everything in between. If you want more quality leads, more booked jobs, and more growth, visit the link in the description or the sponsors page on the Roofing Success Podcast website. I talk to contractors every day that feel stuck. Not because they're not working hard, but because they're missing the structure to growth without chaos. Or their culture's falling apart because their team's unclear, unaligned, or just burned out. And when change hits, they're reacting instead of leading because time and priorities aren't under their control. Day 41 Thrive helps to fix that with proven strategies for growth, culture, and leadership that actually work. Ready to thrive beyond the storm? Visit the link in the description or visit the Roofing Success Podcast website on the sponsors page to start your journey today. If you're running roofing crews, you know the Friday afternoon headache. You're stuck chasing down crumpled gas receipts, wondering why the fuel bill is $400 higher than it should be this week. Check out our sponsor, Coast. Coast is perfect for the roofing business owner who's tired of pin sharing and gas station detours. Since it's a Visa, your guys can stop anywhere Visa is accepted, choosing the most efficient route so no more driving 5 miles out of the way just to find a specific brand of pump while the sun is burning daylight. Click the link in the description to get started with Coast today. The Coast Visa commercial credit card is issued by Celtic Bank, subject to credit approval. Results may vary.
What were some of the lessons you learned during that time frame?
some of the major lessons that I learned were, as you go along, you got to play your numbers right, because it does boil down to your numbers, so like on your, return on investment, So I kind of learned as I went along, like there is a system, right? So like, for example, like if I get 200 calls, I know that maybe only 54 of those conversions are going to convert to an actual sale, right? So, or not to a sale, but to a sales rep, I should say.
Yeah.
And then from that sales rep, he's only going to close maybe 20 to 30%, especially on an Angie's lead list.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe if it's SEO or something, it's at a higher level, right?
Yeah.
But on those ones, you're lucky to get 20, 30%. So then you kind of had to play your numbers. If I spend this much and I spend this much, what do I truly need to profit to actually move the needle on my actual NOI net income, so I'm not just spinning the wheels, spending money and staying busy, but really grabbing nothing in between. That was kind of where
Mm.
had to really look, because
And I think of that as you mentioned earlier, is you kinda, a lot of a lot of those jobs from those lead aggregators through buying leads and multiple, you're in a competitive situation. So your margins are probably smaller, but because you were small, you didn't have overhead, so you could take that, you could take that hit on those jobs at that time. But then as you started adding people and adding a truck and adding all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, here we can't go below this now. We used to be able to go here, but now we can only go to here. Right. Where that's a great lesson to learn for sure.
yeah, it was. I mean, Jim, that was the hardest lesson. You don't realize, when you get money rolling like that, because
Yes.
it's in and out, so it's really hard to grasp. Are we winning here or are we losing? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we turned up the heat on you. And then you came over to Roofer Marketers, Job Nimbus Marketing, and all of a sudden all of a sudden the phone is ringing and even more, and people are looking for you specifically and your company specifically, and and your reviews are probably getting better and all the different stuff. Your SEO is starting to work and all that. Um, you know, ha- I feel like a lot of contractors, when they move kind of in that phase, they don't handle the incoming calls well.
No.
And you lose a lot of opportunities there because you're not ready for it. Was that something that you experienced also?
Um, so here, I'll give you like an experience on our end. Like, so for me personally, yeah, I think we had that end vetted well just because we were so used to playing with Angie's. Like, it was like, Jim, it didn't matter if we're sitting in the middle of a date on date night and that phone rings, I got to step away. It's
Yeah.
got to get answered, which, might upset whoever you're with, because they're like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
dude's being rude, but they didn't get it that, if I don't get that right now, somebody else is, you know? So these ones,
Mhm.
in that regard, we were prepared for that angle, but I'll tell you an angle that we did struggle on. So for us, like you were saying, you guys got us a ton of leads coming in, right? So the biggest thing that I realized and struggled on was you got to watch because you can bog down your sales reps with too many leads.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
so it's bad for you and them, right? Now they'll tell you they can take the world on, you know, and
Yeah.
it's their commission, right? They want their money. But what happens is they get so overwhelmed that it affects their closing rates. So you got to watch, like you get too many, give them leads, lead, then they start cherry picking a little, and then their quality, they're running in and out of the door, and it's hard to build value in time when you can't sit there and actually hear the customer's concerns, right? It's like sell the problem, not the price. But when
Mhm.
they get overwhelmed and bogged, they feel pressured too because they're like, oh, I got to go to the next appointment. You know what I mean? Because they're just coming and coming and coming. So that was, I think, one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. What have you found is a good appointments per day for your sales reps now? What have you landed on?
I'd say like 2 to 3, you know,
Yeah.
2 to 3 max.
Yep.
Uh, Especially, well, I mean, like, we try to be fair, like, if there's one, like, in a neighborhood, they're driving far, and maybe if another one calls, then, yeah, we might tack on another one so they don't have to drive all the way back.
Yep.
But I mean, here you got, in my opinion, a couple hours at least at each appointment. You got to drive there in between. And then if you sold a job, you got managers calling you asking questions about the prior job. So I feel like if you really truly vet 2 to 3 leads, I mean, that's an 8, 10 hour day, Jim,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
you know?
And that allows them that I've seen this review on Google more times than I like, and it's, on multiple companies. It's they came out, said they were gonna give me an estimate, and no one ever called me back.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you bog your sales reps down and they don't have time to get back to the person that they sat with that they sat with, boy, they're gonna we got problems. Like, we have bigger problems because now you're just not only are you wasting marketing efforts, but you're missing opportunities and getting people frustrated with the process, right?
Yes.
Um, so that's a tough one. So now you've streamed, or at least, to a point. Well, we always have problems, you know what I mean? All of us have problems. It's
Especially
never
roofing.
perfect for sure. Yeah, it's never perfect, right?
Right.
Um, but so you try to shoot for the 2, you know, catch one on the way back if it's a far one, you kinda you try and work it out for them, in that regard. What's a successful sales rep to you now? What would how if you had to say, "Hey, this is a perfect sales rep," what would
Uh,
that be?
well, despite the closing, right? Because that's obviously the closing
Mhm.
rate's important. But I would say the next thing is their details, right? Like they got to be transparent. You can't promise the world. You got to realize when your mouth is moving, people are also taking mental contracts. So,
Mm,
well, that's not what I was said. That's not what I was told. So you got to be very calculated in the way you're telling people what you're going to do for them, right? Because even though it's not on the contract, if you say that, they expect that to be withheld. So you'll run into that. So I feel like details are the number one. I feel like that's the difference from good and great, you know?
yeah,
Uh, because if not, they'll hammer you down. Um,
yeah.
and especially in our process, the way we got it, we have a guy that he's the general manager, right? His name's Harry, great guy. He does a lot for our company, and I respect him. He's always had my back. Um, and he orders the products and materials, right? So it can be challenging for him if the details aren't right, because then
Mm,
he's sending it out to the crew, he's sending it out to the manager that's overseeing the project. So if their details are off, it creates chaos. And you only got your reputation and word. And at the end of the day, Jim, I mean, I understand mistakes can concur, but mine would be details. You know, I think they're huge, man, almost more than the sale, because it's like this, you know, I've been to places even, and I'm kind of comparing this. I've been to restaurants where, you know, I, I didn't have a good time just because they didn't fill my glass of water when I'm trying to eat. And then I've gone to other places, they got the guy coming around spilling the water in your drink, right? And it's like the experience made it so better because everything went
yeah,
seamless. And it started with
yeah.
fundamentals, and proper sequences do matter. And that's kind of what I'm relaying it to. So, yeah, I think details are the most important thing.
Okay, let's walk through those details. I like this. I like where this is going. Um, let let's start with on all the way through the customer journey, right?
Okay.
So let's talk about those details. How I think that they're and I know from you reading the book multiple times and being a client of ours and things like that. We like how do what are the details that you put into your marketing that make the homeowner feel like you're the company to call? Let's start there because that starts to me, that's the inception of the homeowner communication.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one thing I always say, I'm going to take care of your place like it's my grandma's house, you know, especially everybody loves grandma. They always nurture her and they can't wait to be here. She's usually the glue and center of the home, right? And
Yep.
So I always, try to relay them to that because everybody loves to go there. So, and it makes people feel comfortable, because that's like you said. I mean, you got to look at it like this too, Jim. It's a big investment to a customer, right? And not only is it a big investment, you're working on pretty much what every American works their entire life for is a home, right? So they're allowing
Mhm.
you and trusting you to work on usually a 30-year investment. So their tensions are a little higher until you earn that trust, So I really think that helps, reassuring them almost like, we're in this together, I'm going to take care of
Yeah.
you. Um, Kind of like that's the most key to me, make them feel like you're with them, you know?
And then how do you get your sales reps now they're running the appointments, how do you get your sales reps to also communicate that's this in a similar fashion, I would say, to make sure that the homeowner understands?
Well, we have to be honest with you, we have like it's called a pre-inspection sheet, right? And it has
Okay.
some like I'll just give you I mean it's pretty lengthy, but there's some key points like especially in today's world, a lot of people have satellites on their roof now, right? So they still have dish or whatever. So, and especially in today's world after COVID, tons of people work from home, right? So that dish comes down. So in our pre-inspection, we say, hey, we want to let you know the day of install, you're going to lose your internet, right? And we can't put that back on your household because, it's going to void your warranty. So you need to call your satellite company. And so many people appreciate that, especially when they work home gym, because you
Mhm.
could really stir them up. They miss work or, you get your sports guys, including me, in a playoff situation. Now we're missing our game. Those old timers, they don't appreciate that, you know? They'll get real riled up. And unfortunately, we made a pre-inspection sheet. And I hate to say this, but I got to be transparent with you. A lot of it came from experiences that were learning curves. Sometimes
That
bad experiences, right? So like we have a sheet, for example, condition of the attic. So many people store things in their attic, and then you go there and take it off, and they got slots between their wood. Granulations are falling in, stuff's falling in. So we give them the opportunity to protect it or pull it out because
mm,
then they come home and they're like, oh my gosh, like their Christmas, everything's got dust of granulations,
yep,
And so that was a thing that we've kind of eased on them. We have like another one, uh, condition, like pets and children. You don't know how many times homeowners get comfortable and they just let their dog out or let their children come out and play. And it's like, no, 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 this is a construction zone. Like your kid or your dogs could get a nail in their foot and we don't want that to happen, and some people don't realize the severity of it. You got 8 guys on top of your roof, they can't see below that well. So, we always
yep.
like to inform. So I feel like that pre-inspection sheet has really helped us evolve because it allows us to maybe get some details in that most might miss.
Okay.
It just again, details.
Yeah. So now you get the details, you're establishing those details to the homeowner. Now that turns into internal communication, right?
Correct.
How does that get passed over to the production team? How do they know that all of these things were done? And it sounds like you have checklists and things like that, but walk through that communication process.
Okay. Well, we do have a CRM, which is called AccuLinks, of course, mainstream. So we kind of mainstream it in that regards. But then we also have an on-site manager that is present on the job all day, from start to finish. He literally is there to oversee the job, make sure safety violations aren't being met. Especially now, OSHA's really dropping the law. The tie-offs they're getting more strict and strict on it. So you got to make sure your safety's complied. And they have all the paperwork too, Jim. So as they're there, they can see all of this. And we also make it mandatory for our reps to get in contact with the sales rep. Preferably, we like them to go by the job, but sometimes it's not feasible if they got an appointment in the morning. But if not,
Mhm.
we expect them to get with the homeowner or get with the crew leader and at least call them and, go over everything. And, even like this, back to this, you don't realize this one will really rub somebody wrong too. You get in them neighborhoods where it's a little more white collar than blue, they got big money on landscaping, Jim. So some of them have sentimental trees or bushes that might have came from a great grandpa or way back in the day, and they're very strict about it. So, like, we even have a section where it says, "Are there any sentimental trees or bushes to you?" That way, it's sacred and
Yeah.
protected because
Yeah.
you can replace money, but one thing you can't replace is time. And when it's sentimental, there's
Yeah.
no value on that. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, and that'll get you into trouble.
big trouble.
Um, how do you manage the expectations that the sales rep set with production you'd mentioned, right? So if the sales because even if it's not in the contract, I heard it come out, the way you framed it, even if it's not in the contract, if it came out of the sales rep's mouth, it's part of it, right? And
Right.
so how how do you manage that? Or let's go to how do you manage how do you hope it's managed? And then how do you manage it when it goes wrong?
Fair. Yeah, you hope that it's, it is addressed correctly, but typically what we'll do is if it does go south, right? Because you got to be ready for it, unfortunately, but that's just the name of the game. If
Mhm.
it does go south, what I'll usually do, just so we're all on the same page, I'll go out to the job. The project manager goes out to the job and the sales rep, and we'll circle up with the homeowner. That way, everybody is all on the same page, same note, so we can address and get everything going in the right direction. You know, so I feel like that's done a lot of beneficial to all ends. Because sometimes too, and again, I don't want to say this, but you get one man interactions and the sales rep's not present or the manager's not present, then it starts to, well, that's not what I was told. That was not what I was told, right? So if you get everybody on the same page, it just makes it so much easier to get the clarity you need to be able to win, you know?
Yeah. And it's always when it goes wrong. Like it's what you do when things go wrong. Like
Right.
that makes a like that's really where you get to shine almost, right? Because stuff is gonna happen.
It
It's
is.
not like it's gonna happen. This is construction. We're gonna be, this is things are gonna happen. Um, but you have to have that way to pull it back in, get the make the customer happy. We talked about a book that I'm working on that I've been working on it for a little bit now, so don't get too excited if you're listening that it's coming out soon. But one of the threads within all the people that I've interviewed is it's the their care for the customer, for the homeowner, right? And so that's really what we're doing is you can get so many more wins out of those situations. And then those wins or those problems go on to that pre-inspection checklist, right? And it's this we get this feedback loop going on where it's like, oh, we're getting great. We're solving more problems and we're having less problems on the job. That's something to strive for. How do you continuously keep you have a general manager now, you have your sales reps now, you're not out there installing roofs anymore,
No.
right? How do you as the owner, now keep that pulse and make sure that things are driving in the right direction?
Well, I think weekly meetings are a very serious matter. You got to get everybody together, go over key updates, key details. So I feel like that does. And, even just once in a while getting on the phone, hearing them, making sure they're okay too. Um, is everything okay with you? Right. Because it is still family oriented, right? I mean, it's not corporate
Yep.
driven. So you want to check on your people, they're small, they're dedicated to you. So I want to also make sure they're mentally okay, that, you know, they're doing good. Is there anything I can do for you? And that way, if we have to have any corrections, it's just easier to do it over an actual face to face interaction versus on the phone. So I think that and then also, I think it's good to have a weekly meeting. Everybody sees each other. We bring the morale up. Everybody is just all, they can voice what they had that was needed to be corrected, or and it's always better to be learning and evolving. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still to this day, I'm learning.
It's nonstop, and I think you have to have that in you, to be a business owner. Like, you gotta have that, like, that you have to have that drive to continuously want to learn more and strive to be better and things like that. That's and it's a mental game, right? That's part of the mental game of it, and I think when we talked, um you know, we talked about some of the mental game around, especially in seasonality with like northern markets like you're in. I'm in Minnesota and stuff, and you know, w- what let's talk about that for a little bit. What about how have you dealt with the seasonality of the business as you've from the beginning and then as you've grown?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, for us in Ohio, it's so wish-washy. We've had seasons where we've had great winters, and then we've had tough winters. So
Yep.
so it's just that's the part that is to this day a little uneasy, is because you just don't know what Mother Nature is going to prepare for you. Um, but however, it's just that's the time I feel like when we got to get up on the back end and correct things, update documents, and prepare for a better year, right? So that's where we kind of clean the house up as far as organization, and also I believe like even just walking an hour, doing a little bit of exercise, keeping your mind moving. It's very critical. I mean, because if not, it's easy to sit still and get in your head. As they say, idle mind is devil's play. So you got to keep your mind sharp and moving. That's the biggest thing. I like to try to walk once a day or get some kind of form of exercise in, and I think that helps a lot. And in that regard, I believe also still having meetings with your people is important because, they're feeling the same way you are in the winter, right? Like they're nervous, they're scared, they're hurting too, right? So you got to get
Yep.
together and just ride the boat together as a team. Everybody's feeling how you are, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's tough, but and those are some of the things you'd mentioned to me, like taking the walk and things like that. What other things do you build into your daily routine as an owner to keep that clarity and focus?
Um, well, I've like I was saying when you and I first talked as the owner, like I've realized when I get ready for work, especially in the winter, like I got to set my phone down, like give myself 20 minutes to actually get ready. Like as before, I would look at my phone, look at the weather, you know, answer everything, and then it just gets harder to mentally prepare yourself. But at least if you take your fresh shower, brush your teeth, do the basic necessities, and you give yourself 15, 20 minutes of your own time, I feel like you can mentally be prepared to take the day on better. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to, Jim, you fall victim of it, especially now with social media, news events. It's easy to get down and out when you look at your phone. Stock markets, this, that, and the other, they can put some negative thoughts in your mind.
Pretty quick.
Pretty
Pretty
quick.
quick, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if some of the what have been some ideas or, like, things that you've come up with in your in these quiet moments that I'm gonna call them your quiet moments, right? Like, in the before you turn everything on for the day or when you're taking your walk and have it, putting the phone down, what are some of the things that you have what are some of the things that have come out of that for your business?
Well, I feel like it comes to a point too, like when you try too hard, a man's only worth so much, right? Like you can't change the whole outcome of the day. Sometimes when you work harder and harder and harder, that's not really the answer, right? You're just burning yourself out. And I was a victim of that, Jim. I would work daylight till dark, and just you gotta go. But all you're doing is burning your physicality out and your mentality. You're not really gaining much. So I
Yeah,
I do believe, like you said, like you were saying, you got to have downtime, whether it's, take your wife to dinner, watch a movie, read a book, or just set the phone away. You got to, especially as a business owner, I feel like if you hang on the phone, you're working, in our trade, right? Like there's no
Yep.
scrolling through Facebook, looking through it. Because if you do, you're working. Somebody's calling you, somebody's emailing you, and boom, you're sidetracked. So for me, I got to set the phone down or I can't stop.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
bad.
That's those phones are the phones will get you. That's for sure. The algorithm is strong. And
Retargeting.
they know exactly. Yeah, exactly. They know exactly what to do, right? They know exactly how to keep you engaged. What do you think is the one superpower every roofing owner needs to develop to maintain a business long term?
Build a brand. Build the brand. That's however you do it. Stay strong to your brand because like I was saying, I was a victim of it as well. When you lead on just leads, when you stop paying, the phone dries up. And then you're like,
Mm,
that's when it was really kicked me in the head. And I was like, wow, I got to build my brand. If I don't build my brand, I'm nothing. You know, it's got to be, you got to give that white glove experience to everybody, make sure that they want you more than the next man. Because it's like this, Jim, you go to a table, right? And a customer says, why should I choose your roofing company? Every one of the roofers is going to say, well, I'm BBB affiliated. I got Google reviews. I've done tons in your neighborhood, so it's like, you got to be different and build the brand, because if
yeah.
not, we're all the same, right?
Yep, that's it. That's the differentiator, and brand will continue to be a differentiator going into the future. Zach, it's been awesome, man. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.